there's a very big difference between marketing something where we are working for a brand versus marketing ourselves when we are the brand. The most important thing you can do for marketing, for branding, and for sales is decide and define. Decide and define who you are and who you're not. Decide and define your integrated product suite. What price points are you willing to sell at, and what price points are you not willing to sell at? What kind of projects are in your sweet spot that you and or your team love to do, and what projects are a non-starter right from the get-go?
Welcome to Marketing by Design, where you and I learned from our favorite founders and marketers on how they built their success and told their stories by design. I am your host, Andy Milligan. Let's get started. So let's talk about this concept of marketing, your book, Do It Marketing. Why do you think there is such a big disconnect to when people do marketing for other people versus when they do it for themselves? Why is that so much harder?
So I love this question. This really gets to the heart of so much of the challenge around entrepreneurship. So it's not only marketing a product versus a service. It's not only marketing for another company or a big name brand versus marketing for yourself. I think when we're company, right? We have a business card, and kids, you can look up what a business card used to be. It's on Wikipedia, I'm sure. But you have a logo. You have a nice, big, juicy, fat title, probably. When you send an email, it gets immediately replied to. When you leave a voicemail, people call you back within minutes. And then we take you out of that context. You're no longer working for the big brand, the big product, the big service company. And now all of that is different. When you send an email, you sometimes get ghosted. When you leave a voicemail, sometimes you get called back. Most times you don't. And you're looking around, you're like, what happened? What changed? Did I suddenly get like 3 eyeballs? Am I some kind of mutant or what is going on? But I think there's a very big difference between marketing something where we are working for a brand versus marketing ourselves when we are the brand. And because this comes to our, identity. If I'm selling for IBM and I get hung up on, I don't make a sale, they start negotiating me down on price to where I don't want to be, I'm like, well, number one, not my problem. Number two, you're not trying to devalue me. You're devaluing IBM. You're devaluing Google. You're devaluing Procter & Gamble. You're devaluing some big, giant global agency. Now we go out on our own and we hang out our own shingle, and now it's David and company. Now it's Andy and company. Now they're not returning your calls. That's not disrespecting IBM. That's disrespecting you, or so we think. They're negotiating you. They're trying to put you in a commodity box. That's not putting IBM in a commodity box. That's not putting, Procter & Gamble in a commodity box. That's not putting AT&T in a commodity box. That's putting you and me in a commodity box. So our identity shifts from being the representative of a company or a brand or a product or a service to being the brand and being the product and being the service. So suddenly this hurts a lot more. Rejection hurts a lot more. Prospecting is a lot more difficult. All of that self-doubt, self-worth, self-image, all those demons start to get a dialogue going in your head. And this is where imposter syndrome comes from, of course. So you say, well, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I need to go out and get another degree. Maybe I need to start a second podcast. I've already written 1 best-selling book. Gosh, maybe I have to get a second best-selling book. I already have 1 PhD. Maybe I need 2 or 3 more PhDs. And the more that we look for outside validation, the harder this becomes. So I think you need to have a 1-person strategic retreat with yourself. You need to get in deep touch with your not only your values, but your value and how you move the needle for clients and the kinds of outcomes and results that you've created in any chapter and any context of your professional career. It could be a past job, it could be your current endeavor, it could be a previous career. And you say, you know what? Time after time after time, I am now noticing and recording a pattern of delivering the goods. I now realize that I have a track record of being pretty darn awesome at what I do. And the more that you can reinforce through evidence, through thank you notes, through emails, through LinkedIn recommendations that you've received, the more that you can get that internal level of self-worth and self-esteem, all the outside stuff no longer matters. And then you start to shift your mindset from, oh my gosh, it's just little me, and who am I to be doing this? And there are other people that are ahead of me and smarter than me and bigger than me and have deeper expertise and experience than me. All of that can start to dissipate, and then you can really start to create the kind of business that you're meant to create.
Yeah. So much of what you just said, I could spring off on, but fish and water syndrome, and this even goes bigger beyond marketing. Fish and water syndrome is something to where you just can't see the label inside of the box, and you kind of talk about, you almost have to objectively see, hearing it back to yourself, what is the value that I actually add? You have to look at those testimonials. What we tell people when we're building their sites or when they're auditing their own is that it's so hard to see inside the label of their own business. So you look at your best testimonials, you look at who are the clients that have actually helped the most in the past, and that informs the value that you can actually add. Because the moment you start to think aspirationally, like what could this business be, then you start to get distracted by all of these shiny objects and you remove yourself from the reality of what you may actually be good at. A combination of hearing those things back to you and also just asking for feedback, working with other professionals, doing consulting, like the feedback that you get from one person who has accomplished the goals that you're trying to accomplish, whether it's in marketing, whether it's building your own business, making the transition from an in-house role to something freelance that's on your own. You have to hear that validation from other people. And then eventually over time, you start to wear down that imposter syndrome, those voices in your own head that say, I'm not qualified. I'm not good enough to do this, because I can tell you right now, everyone has those to some extent. And the way to overcome that is to start having the conversations and putting yourself out there. But yeah, you kind of mentioned a little bit there in the beginning too, about branding, and you've said a lot kind of in your past interviews and books around branding. One quote you said that branding is BS, which to an extent I do agree with. But one thing that you did say in particular that I thought was actually like a differentiated take that I might say is this idea that branding actually comes after marketing sequentially in the order. So the instance that I phrase that to mean is you say, okay, you have to make sure that you know what the offer is, validate it, know what the exact deliverables of it are, versus, getting you talked about your own experience working with a brand designer, getting the business cards, getting the logo before actually validating the concept for yourself. So talk to me about that order of operations and
Sure.
why marketing comes before branding, in your philosophy.
So again, one of my favorite topics, and I do have a section in the Do It Marketing book that is titled exactly "Branding is BS," and that's where conversation comes from. So I think a lot of times, and this isn't true across the board. So I don't want to
Mhm.
just paint the entire branding and brand consulting industry with tar them with the same brush, but I will. Most of the time, branding is done to a company. It is not done with a company. It's not done from their actual products and services and value prop and strategy. It's like a layer that they add on. And then this is like let's say that your business is a teenager and a young teenager, okay, 13, 14 years old. And you go out and branding is going clothes shopping, and you go to a clothing store and you want to put this person in a business suit. And so they measure the person that's in that kind of teenage, early awkward, early adulthood period. They put the clothes on the kid and they're like, "Okay, well, that's your brand. See you later." And maybe for the first week or two, it feels okay, but then it starts to get a little bit scratchy, starts to get a little bit itchy. You realize the pants don't quite fit. Then suddenly, you're home for a summer and you jump up 3 inches in height. Now the pants are a little bit too short. The shirt's a little bit tighter than you'd like it to be. The jacket doesn't quite fit, like it starts to creep up on your wrist and so forth. And you're like, wow, I think I need a new suit. I think I need a new set of clothes because your business and your business idea is not fully formed. And so I think people do branding A, too early, and then B, they do it on a surface level, as opposed to really looking at the overall strategy first. And this isn't, some branding agencies will say that they do this, but they really kind of don't, where they do a
Mhm.
deep dive on the strategy, purely the strategy, only the strategy, the messaging, the packaging, the differentiation, the distinction. What is really the secret sauce of this company? Let's say it could be an agency, it could be a professional services firm, it could be a widget manufacturer. But where are they awesome? Where are they going to compete with an unfair advantage? Where are they not going to compete? So it's who are they? Who are they not? What do they stand for? What do they stand against? What is what makes them cooler, better, faster, smarter than all the competing and alternative options that an economic buyer would have? And until
Mhm.
you really do that entire process to build out why does your company exist? What makes it cooler, faster, better, smarter? Why should prospects and clients and customers choose you above all the other competition? Do you sound like, look like, and act like everyone else in your industry? And then let's say that the answer to that, because you're not very sophisticated in the strategic part yet, let's say, well, yeah, we have a commoditized business. And so the answer, some people think, some CEOs, some founders, we're in a very commoditized business. We better hire a branding firm to help us decommoditize who we are and what we do. It's not a branding firm's job to
Yeah.
decommoditize who you are and what you do and what you stand for, right? So you need to make those decisions first. You need to
Mhm.
have a pipeline of prospects. You need to have some closed deals. You need to have some track record in your target market. And then I think you're ready for branding. So branding is an expression of all of those internal decisions that you've already made. And a
Mhm.
good branding agency and a high integrity branding agency will actually tell you, you know what? I don't think you're really ready for us. You're not really
Mhm.
ready for us yet. I mean, we could do a whole brand thing with a new logo and color scheme and mood boards. And, if you were a car, what kind of car would you be? And, describe to me your business like it's an amusement park and all these crazy, nutty, outside in type of exercises and activities. But a really ethical branding firm will say, you need to make some foundational decisions before
Mhm.
we can do our best work. Who you are, who you're not, what you do, who you do it for, what you do best, and who you do it for best, right? So we always talk about, who's your ideal client, who's your ideal client profile, who's your
Mhm.
ICP. And I think business owners and CEOs and founders are so sick and tired of that question because if you dig really deep down, most of them will tell you, well, here's my best guess, but Andy, I really don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to share the elephant in the room. We don't know our
Mhm.
ICP. We've been in business for 5 years and we still don't know our ICP because we do
Mhm.
business with this kind of client, that kind of client, this size customer, that size customer. Some customers give us $5,000. Other customers give us $500,000. Um, and they just don't know. They don't know because they haven't decided. So this
Mhm.
is one of the things I also talk about in the Do It Marketing book. I think that this probably appears in all three of my books. That the most important thing you can do for marketing, for branding, and for sales is decide and define. Decide and define who you are and who you're not. Decide and define your integrated product suite. What are the products and services, and what's the ascension ladder, small, medium, large, super size of what you want to be selling? What price points are you willing to sell at, and what price points are you not willing to sell at? what kind of projects are in your sweet spot that you and or your team love to do, and what projects are a non-starter right from the get-go.
Hmm.
So there are so many decisions that you need to make to get that deciding and defining level of clarity that you need to be in business for a couple of years before any real industrial strength branding is going to help you. Now, is it going to help you at that point? Absolutely. It's going to be a
Hmm.
force multiplier. It's going to externalize all of these things in a very powerful, and communicative and articulate way so that the clarity of what you do, who you are, why you do what you do, why you're cooler, better, faster, smarter, the clarity on that is now dialed up to 100%. And you literally become a magnet, not just for clients and prospects, people that you want to have come work for you, people that you want to partner with you, whether that's a referral partner, a project partner, a channel partner, people that you want to have invest with you and give you growth capital, even ultimately people that you want to have acquire you. But until you have that level of clarity, amplifying something that is kind of mushy and squishy is only going to hurt and it's never going to help.
Yeah. And I'll also say, too, people try and skip the correct order of operations to what is most shiny and appealing, you know?
Yes.
And that's why a lot of people come to us too when they don't have that offer in place. A lot of startups try and skip past the foundations of where they don't have the reps yet. There's so much to be said about doing that stuff first, actually taking the time to go inside. And the reason, David, a lot of people avoid this is because it's uncomfortable. Like, you have to ask yourself these questions. You have to get that feedback. You have to do the deep work of actually knowing the value that you add before you ever start to attach visuals or any sort of visual branding to it. Because I tell you, the moment you do that, you are planting a stake in the ground. You are saying, okay, this is who we are. This is the visuals that we're attaching with this offer, with this business. We're making it real, and you're pouring gasoline onto that fire of what you've already started to build. And only at that point can it actually kind of be effective and really accomplish its goals. So I love your analogy there about it being, the gas on the fire that can really emphasize what's already there to build with. And something that we say is that you can't design for something that you can't understand. So
Yes.
if you don't know your own offer, you can't ever start to attach any sort of a visual, any sort of a website experience, any sort of laid out visual representation of that if there's nothing there to begin with. And there's a lot of other analogies of this where I could go, and you're full of analogies in all of your books too. So I'm looking forward to hearing more of those as we dive into this. Something I do want to talk about too is sort of zooming out a little bit. We kind of went straight to the tactical, but I want to talk about your career, your background. I think you have this really nuanced and insightful take because you were the person that you now help. You were
Nice.
your clients at one point,
Yeah.
and you've solved the problem that you experienced viscerally, and that's marketing problems, speaking problems, selling problems. So I want to talk to you about, and sort of in our first conversation off camera, we talked about how you had started late. And I don't think you personally, this is my own inflection, I don't think you actually started late. I think all this career equity, your time at these companies, you're building this muscle that is you. And that's what we tell a lot of marketers and founders who built a lot of their skill and career equity, their network, especially through professional roles and going to events, going to conferences, meeting people. You're building this muscle that is yourself so that when you apply all the focus to the one thing that is you, you're the sole beneficiary of all those actions. And you're just so much more, your actions compound more effectively. And that's why I think you've been able to, build what you have and, in a compressed time. And also you're very driven, you work very hard, not to shortchange any of that. But something that I want to talk to you about, especially that we see a lot in our audience members, is this cost of waiting, this cost of saying, okay, when have I gotten that career value experience to when I then have the credibility to do this for myself and then really put my own spin, my own unique taste on what my offer is. Talk to me about what that transition looked like for you and how you help people make that transition and overcome for themselves.
Sure. So I spent 10 years on the inside working for the man, so to speak, in various consulting firms, big management consulting and technology consulting specifically. Went out on my own January of 2002, had no idea what I was doing. And I think, Andy, in our previous conversation, I said that I literally made every mistake in the book and I made the good ones twice because I was bumbling and fumbling and couldn't make these decisions about target market or niche or specialization. So finally, I figured some things out and I started having some success. The moment that happened, my peers started to come to me and say, "Hey, David, can I pick your brain? Hey, David, can I take you to breakfast? Can we have coffee? Can we have lunch?" And of course, I said yes because they were good people. They were asking good questions. It was fun for me to kind of share a little bit about what I was doing and how I was doing it. And at one point, at one specific lunch with a friend who's still a friend to this day, he just stops mid-sentence as he's asking me these questions and I'm giving him these answers about how do you sell to big companies? How do you get these recurring contracts? How do you do this? How do you do that? He stops and he goes, "You should do this for a living." And I said, "I should do what for a living? Eat bacon and eggs?" He goes, "No, no, no. You should teach people what you're telling me right now." And Andy, I laughed at him. I said, "No, no, no, no. That's ridiculous." It's like, "What are you
Yeah.
talking about? Solopreneurs, small business owners, small agency owners? You're all broke. You're all helpless. You're all clueless. I'm not doing that. Thanks, but no thanks. I'm going back to my big Fortune 500 clients." And at that point, I did have big Fortune 500 clients. So Microsoft, Oracle, HP, Merrill Lynch, American Express, Bank of America, you name it. They were, I had some level of speaking, training, coaching, or consulting work with companies like that. Lo and behold, about a month later, I had this epiphany. And he and I reconnected, and he said, "Listen, if I get 3 or 4 guys together, guys and gals, can we do something that's just in your living room and you just download everything in your brain into us?" And I said, "Well, that sounds like fun, but I'm going to have to charge you." And he says, "Well, how much is it going to be?" And I said, "Well, let's say we do it for 4 weeks. It's going to be $50." He says, $50 a week? I said, "No, not $50 a week, $50 period from each of you because I got to go out and buy the bagels and the coffee and the juice and the donuts." So there I am with I think it was about 4 people. So for $200, I'm having this great time just literally riffing and brainstorming and downloading everything that I know about how experts can sell to big Fortune 500 companies. At the same time, I get like $1,000 contract, $1,000 training day rather, with this insurance brokerage firm. And I walk into the insurance brokerage firm and I see a whole bunch of grumpy faces. Like they're all there in the training room. They're there like this, arms crossed, grumpy faces. They don't want to be there. And at that moment, it struck me that I am in the wrong room doing the wrong thing for the wrong people for the wrong reason. And even though there's a $10,000 check attached to this room full of 20 grumpy people, I am having way more fun with my Breakfast Club colleagues for $200 instead of $10,000 in teaching them about this entrepreneurial marketing, branding, speaking thing that they want to do. So literally that was the day that I dialed back on my corporate work and I started doing more with the small and solo entrepreneurs and the small agency owners and the small business owners. And that was that was the version 1.0 or version 0.9 version of what I'm doing today, 15, 16 years later. So the first, so I've been doing this for 23 years since 2002 as of this recording, depending on when you're listening to us. And so out of those 23 years, 7 years were kind of doing my own thing. At first, lost, clueless, and broke, then figured some things out. And then the last 16 years is helping other people, the help that I wish I had when I was clueless and bumbling and fumbling and hitting every brick wall and every dead end. So my ideal client is David Newman in 2002. It's that smart person who is trying to figure this entrepreneurship game out and just, either has no idea about marketing and selling or really just hates it. So marketing for people who hate marketing. selling for people who hate selling. How can you do it in a way that is organic and easy and fun and fits your own personality and your own personality, preferences, and strengths, and without feeling yucky or pushy or salesy? And that's the shape of the business today.
I want to double click on something you said there. The idea of you were enjoying the coffee roundtable so much more than you were your professional consulting.
Yes.
We see this a lot with people who, especially because a lot of them do volunteer work, they do community organizations, they do networking on the side, and that is their golden thing, that's their fulfillment. But it's when you're in your own business, how do you retain that? You said you enjoyed that so much more. This is very top of mind for me because we started freelancing web design back when I was in college, and I very viscerally remember the reason I started doing this whole thing was because of a volunteer marketing organization at my college. The short version of that is that we worked for free for local businesses in exchange for donations back to our university. So, long story short, I got into designing a whole brand identity and website for a local brewery. And that's how I learned everything. Like I was getting like David, I was getting up at 5 a.m. for our team meetings. We meet at 5:30 in the mornings, and I wasn't getting paid a thing. But if I look back at my life at that time, I was so excited to just get out of bed and do this thing because I was genuinely enamored by the work. So what I want to ask you about is how do people retain that? Because this is an honest conversation I've had with myself personally and MMG in my own business is how do we retain that excitement, those coffee roundtable emotions and vibes to $200 gigs as we start to scale, add more value, and eventually reach a point where we're like, okay, we have to have the honest conversation. This is what we do for a living, and we need to charge what we're worth to keep the lights on. So how do you retain that fun as you go?
I think it's really about zeroing in on where you have that zone of genius, where you have that flow state where the work is just fun. So I'll give you maybe a little mantra that might be a guiding principle for folks listening and watching. I have two kids who are adults now, but they were kids at one point. They're still my kids, but they're not kids. I went to their summer camp. So they went to a sleepaway camp. And, it's like a 6-week thing. And like at the 3-week mark, the parents visit and so forth. So we're in the computer lab of all places. Very beautiful. It's in this like log cabin thing. But at that time, state of the art, big screen, Macs, all kinds of fun things. They were doing video editing. They were doing all sorts of things, music, multimedia. And there's a big sign on the wall. And I looked at it and it struck me immediately, like a thunderclap. And the sign said, "A master at work is a master at play." And when I saw that, I was like, damn, a master at work is a master at play. So when you say, hey, I got up at 5 a.m. to be on these meetings at 5:30 a.m., I jumped out of bed. I was it's the highlight of my week. I was so looking forward to it. And by the way, what was the paycheck on that? Zero. Zero. Because a master at work is a master at play. Now, can you shape the business that you're in to stay in that zone of mastery? Not 100%, because no one can realistically do it 100%, but 70%, 80%? What are the kinds of clients that you need to start saying no to protect that feeling? What are the kinds of projects that you need to start saying no to protect that feeling? What are the kinds of daily tasks that you need to either simplify, eliminate, delegate, or outsource? That's an acronym, by the way. SEDO, simplify, eliminate, delegate, or outsource to free you up to be in that creative zone where, if you're sending out invoices, you are operating at X. If you are in that zone of genius work, you are operating at 10X. So not only are you 10 times happier, but you are 10 times more effective. You are 10 times more talented. You are 10 times more utilizing your unique skill set. And that is unbelievably fun. That's, if we were to say, okay, this entrepreneurship thing, it's a little bit addictive. Why is it that we're willing to work 70, 80 hours a week, depending on the season of life and the season of your business that you're in? I don't recommend that long term. But why are we willing to work 70 or 80 hours a week on this crazy business where I could get a paycheck and I could work just 40 hours a week and clock in 9 to 5 and then leave the work at work and go home and play with my kids or do my hobbies or, play pickleball or whatever it is. The reason that it's so addictive is that you are in that zone of brilliance. And the more you can be in that zone of brilliance, either start saying no to clients and projects that are not a great fit for you or your team. And then at the same time, the mundane things that you need to do to keep the business going, simplify, eliminate, delegate, outsource. And I think that's the key to winning the entrepreneurial marathon, avoiding burnout and just having a really great time with great clients as you're doing great work.
Yeah, man. And I think the insight, well, I know the insight that hits me about that is a lot of high performers, a lot of people who take that leap to go in and do their things, a lot of founders, entrepreneurs, a lot of people that you and I work with, they are the driven people. They are willing to do the hard work. And this idea that, okay, this part that I enjoy, this fun part, it doesn't feel hard enough, like it's almost like a guilty pleasure of I'm doing this thing that I almost don't give myself the permission to do more of and enjoy because the fact that, it doesn't feel hard, it's not validating.
Yes,
And
yes, yes,
sort of
yes.
overcoming that, like, brute force, like,
Yes.
I'm gonna push it into existence and rather leaning into it, it's something that, I'm trying to get better at, and we see a lot of our audience as well trying to say, "Okay, you can design a business to be whatever you want." If you're a designer, you can build a design-first agency. If you're a strategist, you can build a strategy-first agency and then hire around these roles in order to fit yourself in that seat to where you actually add the most value. And that goes again back to what we talked about in the beginning is, okay, objectify this because once we get that fish and water syndrome, we're starting to throw balls in the air here, thinking, okay, what's the actual value that we add? How does that intersect with what I enjoy doing the most in my zone of genius? And Jim Collins, if you ever read the book Good to Great, he has this hedgehog concept where it's what you can make the most money doing, where you add the most value, and something only you can do. So the very middle of that tri-Venn diagram, what is that for you? And I think a lot of people just shy away from doing the quote unquote fun stuff because it feels too easy. And that's against our nature kind of as high performers. So I hear that a lot in some of the things that you're saying too.
So this is something that I write about a lot, and I coach clients around this, and we have heart-to-heart conversations about this. This is also why people undervalue their work and underprice their work. Here's the principle. The principle is you will always make the most money and you will always make the greatest impact doing things that are easy for you but difficult for others. So this whole concept of, well, this seems too easy, this feels like I'm cheating, this feels like, why are people paying me? Doesn't everyone know how to do this? Isn't this easy breezy for everybody? And the answer is no. So I want people to get in touch with this concept of easy for you, but difficult for others. We understand
Mm,
viscerally. We agree, Andy, that when we're doing something like this is easy, this is fun, this is like a master
mhm,
at work is a master at play. But what you fail to understand and what you fail to appreciate and where you undervalue and underprice yourself is the hardcore, stone cold reality that this is very difficult for people who are not you. This is very
mhm.
difficult for people who
Yeah.
are not you. And I don't mean the graphic design skill. I don't mean any of the tactical, web design stuff or agency stuff or any of that. The thinking comes easily to you, and the thinking is hard for them. The implementation comes easily to you, and the implementation is hard for them. The strategy and the focus and the direction, you can immediately see where this client needs to go and what they need to do. They can't see it at all. They're totally blinded. And so understanding and really meditating on this, if you will, that there
Yeah.
is an entire set of skills and talents and capabilities that you bring to the table that are easy for you and they're very difficult for others. And that is where you will make the most money, as I said, and that is where you will also make the most impact. So don't shy away from that. Don't feel guilty or weird about that. Embrace that, love that, elevate that, and maximize that.
Yeah, dude, so much about what you just said. I don't know if you ever read Atomic Habits by James Clear, but he talks about in an interview he did for that book, he talked about the most real form of marketing is literally just doing cool, hard things and sharing them with people. That's what's going to attract the right people. Like I look at David, I think, man, you've written 3 books and you recorded hundreds of podcast episodes. I'm like, man, like that is difficult. That is hard. That's something that I admire. I'm like, man, we need to have a conversation. We need to start that. And so much of what this awareness is in terms of marketing yourself is being real about what you're doing and then letting that kind of filter in. I think people don't give themselves enough credit as to the value of just sharing what they're doing, and that's going to attract the right people and being honest with it too. If you're just getting started, if your journey is learning the thing as you're doing it, be real about that. People are going to attract you. Referral partners are going to flock their way to you if you're just real about what you're doing, what you're learning, and showing what you have going on is just going to set you up for success and no matter what you do. But David, man, I think it's a good place to land the plane. That 45 minutes went by really fast. You're very well spoken, and like I said, I was really looking forward to this interview. You've been, like I said, you've been in my hearing aids, my Bluetooth compatible hearing aids a lot in the car recently. All of your books, Do It Speaking, Do It Marketing, Do It Selling. Highly recommend those to anyone in the Marketing by Design audience. And, just on a personal note to you, love everything you're doing. I see, seriously, nothing but up and to the right for you. Like every mutual that we have, every thing that I've seen about you online. You're very consistent in your messaging. I very personally look up to your ability to resonate with your audience and also just your speaking skills, something that I'm trying to improve upon myself. So I'm learning a lot personally, and I believe this audience will learn a lot as well. But where can people kind of find you online, take the next step, and learn more about everything that you're putting out there?
Sure. Thank you, Andy, for those kind words. That's really quite meaningful and hugely appreciated. People can certainly connect with me on my website, which is simply doitmarketing.com. There are a whole ton of free resources, and by free I mean ungated, no email required, no opt-in required. If you go to doitmarketing.com/hello, doitmarketing.com/hello, there are downloads, there are podcasts, there are PDFs, there are workbooks, there are interviews, there are short little video snippets on there, all free, all ungated, and all waiting for you to take the next step in building your brand and your market eminence and getting better at these things that Andy and I just talked about. So that's doitmarketing.com/hello.